Oh, so you can record this one. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I've got it on now.
Good.
If
You
anyone
got
wants,
something of it.
want to see something scurrilous, just say off the record and I'll pause it.
Okay. Very
All
funny.
right,
Or somebody
Joel.
was recording it before, we just don't know who.
Well, I wanted to say thank you to Brett for setting this up.
Yeah.
I do need to exit because I'm actually getting ready. I mean, John was asking, what are we going to do that's different now that we're more liberated? We are actually starting to have in-person music classes every Thursday.
Great.
And it's such a thrill. I mean, I play banjo, I play bass, and I have not heard myself play with other instruments for about 15 months. And we've got folks coming over to our house and we're going to play music and the teacher will teach us some new tunes and it is going to be fabulous. But I do need to exit, but I just really got a huge kick out of seeing all of you. And I hope we have a chance to do this again before too long. Anyway, so long, everybody.
Hi,
Bye-bye.
Ruth.
Now that
Bye-bye.
we've learned
Hi,
how.
Ruth.
Did CB come back? CB had a meeting and well,
No,
I guess he didn't come back.
there are only 4 of us now. But anyhow, yeah, it is really funny opening up. I mean, so good. Look how adept we are at Zoom right now. I mean, if you think about a year and a half ago, how do we actually get together? So
Okay.
I think the Zoom culture will survive in many ways for things like this, because you can't always fly places. And especially for like meetings in Europe, there's sometimes where only 6 people want to get together. And you're probably not going to fly there that often to do it. So I think it will change things dramatically. It's still not the same thing as being around a table and seeing people.
There isn't.
Yeah, and so I do think, but in some cases it works more efficiently. So faculty meetings on Zoom are no less, I'll tell you, are no worse than faculty meetings in real person. They might even be better somehow. But some things, people are frustrated in the science community about they're missing the meetings of going to chat to people about what they're working on, things like that. It doesn't quite work. Although there's a new software called something, which is called Gather, where you have a virtual room. Has anybody done this? And you
I did it once.
You've done it. Okay. How's it work?
Well, there was a student at the Yale School of Public Health who set up a poster, a meeting with all the MPH students who are graduating, and some of the PhD students have presentations. Some of them were oral and some of them were poster, but the poster part was you got a little avatar and you walked around from poster to poster, and as you entered you kind of moved your avatar around, you could bump into people and suddenly the face of the person you bumped into, a name would pop up and you could chat then if you wanted to. But you could also, as you left that little bubble, you could head to a poster and the poster presenter was there and anybody else who was listening to him or her talk was there, and you appeared and could actually have a multi-person sort of conversation. I mean, like we're having a multi-person conversation. You couldn't have 2 independent conversations, but you could have, you could do that. It was actually, it was really neat.
So if you have a large group of people, like several hundred or more even, and then you have posters set up, you can actually get together in small groups and it works. That's good.
Zoom has some kind of a breakout room feature that, you familiar with that?
Heard about it, but haven't ever experienced.
Yeah, I've had to teach with it. I've had to teach discussion sections of 40 or 50 students, then you break them into breakout rooms with 5 or 6 in each, and you can go circulate. But it doesn't give you the freedom to say, oh, I want to try something else easily. And you have to set it up more. It's not quite as useful from what I've heard and Gather and what you describe it. Sounds exactly like what would be very good for a meeting. It's more free floating. The breakout rooms are really designed for very organized instructional or sort of groups that have to deliver a product, go out, then come back and report back, things like that. It's not a free flow. So it does work.
Retired, Mike, or not retired?
I'm about to retire on June 29th. I wasn't going to, but this spring, January, after teaching 240 students entirely remotely, and I had to redo the entire course because it was remote. I mean, I couldn't just move the course to remote because you have to change all the way you teach. Everything has to have small assignments. You cannot do the old things. And so I don't give final exams. I give 4 exams during the 10 weeks. I give weekly assignments. There are about 8 different assignments to do every week just to keep them up and going. And I had to rewrite the whole class to do this. It really killed me. I mean, every week I was barely caught up, and I didn't get any research done. I didn't do much else. My wife barely saw me. Saturdays and Sundays were getting the lectures ready for the next week. They had to be pre-recorded. But once it was done, it was easy, but it was crazy. And so that made me decide I was not going to. Then they said, well, you're going to teach the same course and next year. And I said, no. I was going to do it for 1 or 2 more years, but I decided there's no point in doing it because the UC retirement system is good enough that I can manage to live quite readily on retirement now. And also I can keep my research going, keep the grants going and do what I want. You know, but no more 200-person classes.
Did you have grad students to do all the?
I still have a graduate. No, I had graduate students to help, but so I have 2 TAs as graduate students, but they're still dealing with 100 students each, and they're in over their heads, and they've not done it remotely either. Well, some have done maybe a quarter before, and we're all just running around madly. And so you try to set up as automated as possible, but it was crazy. So I mean, totally different didactic system. We're getting all lectures on pedagogy and how we have done all our teaching wrong. We must be more pedagogical for our students. They decided to use this event to retrain us.
What is research like in your field?
So what I do is I do a mix of mostly modeling and measurement analysis. I've occasionally worked on an aircraft mission to take measurements, but mostly I sort of take the data sets, analyze them, and I have a 3D model of chemistry in the atmosphere, those greenhouse gases. And so I write proposals to NASA and NSF and DOE to get funded. And that pays for some of my summer salary. It pays for graduate students, pays for postdocs.
So are the grants in the future going to go to the university or right to you?
I have a choice. I don't think I want them to go to me because the paperwork you have to do. I mean, you could set, like, I actually I had to set up as a DUNS entity once because I wanted to get money for, they were going to pay me money for travel, but they couldn't give me money for travel unless I became a small business contractor with the DUNS number and everything else. So I had to set this up about 15 years ago for FAA just to get $3,000 in travel money back. And so I had to set up an independent, but it's a pain in the neck, reporting and everything else. And you don't really want to do it unless, it's not going to make you rich. And it'll be like teaching 200 students. I have a feeling the pain is not what you want to do. You could do it, but as I said, they're more likely to give it to the university, and the university then handles all the mess.
And when you devise the method to put an end to climate change, is there a way you'll be able to monetize that? That's
a good question. There are a lot of people now. I mean, I've been doing this for about 20 some years. I started working with the climate assessments in 1992. Okay, and now it's gotten into much more eager people in the university, but they're all into engineering solutions. So everybody's now not. My original thing was climate knowledge because we didn't know enough to make the case, to make the arguments. Now everybody's into solutions, and so it's almost beyond my interest. I mean, I'm very interested in finding a solution, but it's beyond my research interest. It's engineering, it's technology stuff. It's microbiology even. So it's much more a design system, and it's also really has to do with getting people to change their minds. I mean, no matter how good an engineering solution you have, you'd be surprised how hard it would be, even if it's a perfect one, to get it working because A, people don't want to change their habits. B, it might affect some people differently than others. And it's a political problem, which is has to be solved. Like the vaccine, exactly, it has to be solved. And you need the scientists, but you also need the people who go out there and fight the system to figure out how to convince people to take their vaccines or to accept a different solution for climate change.
Well, and climate change is even less tangible than, the neighbor gets sick. So,
well, yeah, but I would think so. But we had people in Newport Beach and Huntington Beach who were consistently, for the last 15 months, no masks, no nothing, eating in restaurants, technically outside because they had to close the inside. But the behavior in Orange County was quiet except for Huntington and Newport Beach. It was truly outrageous. And so, everybody went there knows this is really not a place you want to go. It's, full of, these are the kind of people who start fights on airplanes. in spite of them being a very wealthy section of town, of Orange County. It was very strange.
Yeah.
So I think, changing people's minds or getting people to change habits is going to be the hard part for climate is the next step. And sort of my expertise is still underlying what drives it, how we might do it. But I'm not going to be the engineer or fixer, much as I can encourage it or help them.
What habits do we need to change? Reduce
Well,
them?
suppose obvious example is what's the footprint of a pound of beef is something like, 10 kilograms of CO2, pork's 4, chicken's 1. Now, maybe grass-fed beef's different, so I think this is right. This is not grass-fed. I think this may be feedlot, but this is typical estimates of what it takes to do things. So that's one simple thing. And the other question is, of course, cars, electric, and transit, all sorts of habits. People are not necessarily willing to change.
I have a feeling cars are going to be one of the easier things. People get rid of their cars every so often, and it's wonderful driving an electric. I mean, I have a plug-in hybrid. It's great fun.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a problem. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think of an electric car as a coal-fueled car.
Not in California. The coal comes from Nevada somewhere. No, California is very clean. All their power plants burn coal outside of the state. That's been going on for a while in California. It's been pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, I love electric cars. My wife has one, but she only drives around town. If we have to go between Southern California and Cambria, Central Coast, I can't take an electric car. Even if it did 300 miles, if I want to do something like get here, how long do I have to charge it for? And things like that. So unfortunately,
Well,
right
those
now,
things are improving though, right? I mean, the technology for.
right, and it will be there eventually. I agree. Right now, I'd like to get a small electric car that just does 30, 50 miles, because we have a lot of stuff just around town. That's all you need
This
for.
plug-in hybrid that I have, last time I put gas in it was April a year ago.
Alan, that's wonderful.
And
You haven't had to take any long trips, right? I guess.
No. Well, that's right. That was when we got back from Texas last year. So it only gets 25 or 30 miles on electric before you recharge it. But it's enough to do the around town stuff, the short trips. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right, and when you need gas, what's its capacity for longer distance driving? I mean, including gas, not just.
It actually has a pretty good sized gas tank. I think when you fill it up, it's got a 500-mile range or something.
Yeah.
So that's actually
That's a good solution.
a very practical solution. I mean, especially if you only have one car, and you might drive a long distance.
Right. Yeah. So the big car we drive up here just sits in the garage until we take it back and forth. So it's still not carbon efficient, but it's still moderately carbon efficient. The mileage is quite respectable. I have no complaints about it. But now I really love diesels, but they were so bad and they just drove so wonderfully. And the mileage was 40 plus miles per gallon. It was so nice to have a diesel, and they're all gone, except for the very old ones. So it's probably just as well. But I haven't bought a Tesla yet. Everybody in the neighborhood, everybody in Southern California swears a Tesla. The whole neighborhood's full of them everywhere. I don't know why. Do you see that in the East Coast at all or not?
Not that
No,
much.
probably not to the extent of California, but I see a lot.
There are a lot. Okay, there are.
Especially when I go over to the town on Lake Michigan where I go boating, and there's a Tesla dealer in that town, and there's a lot of Teslas there, and there's also a lot of BMWs and other upscale cars there. But
And we have, Hondas and Toyotas.
Yeah.
Ours are aging dramatically, so we are going to have to think about what next.
Well, I've given up buying a car. I always used to buy cars. I only lease them now. So I figure sooner or later, my doctor will say you can't drive. And sooner or later, and also I end up buying everything I can get on the car for safety. I mean, absolutely everything, even though it's absurd, because the technology keeps changing, like, radar, bumpers, collision. There's an infrared camera that picks up warm bodies at night and projects it for you and things like that. And so, I figure they'll save me from doing something very bad. And it's cheap.
The The safest thing you can get is to hire a chauffeur who has
Yeah,
better
a
eyesight,
professional.
younger, and some.
Yes, yeah, younger chauffeur. I think that's probably more expensive than leasing a car, but
Maybe a self-driving car with a driver.
uh, but
Or
you're
the
right, I like
self-driving apparatus doesn't work right. Or people.
because I don't think Lyft and Uber are really that necessarily that safe or reliable. They are younger, but I'm not so sure about their expertise at chauffeuring. They work, but yeah. So, but it's so funny. I used to fly a lot because of science business all over the place and international meetings, and I have not been on an airplane for 18 months. And it's really
We're actually
spooky.
on one in March. We went to Puerto Rico. It was great.
You are so brave. Congratulations.
We were vaccinated, number one.
Yeah, I know that, but even still, you still feel like there's still the edginess when you get on, right?
They were pretty good, you know. The airline basically said, you know, if you don't think you can get through 4 hours on this plane, you can leave now.
You're wearing a mask, and that means covering the nose as well.
Right, and we're going to make sure that that's what you do. And then if this urge hits you in mid-flight to take off your mask, then we'll be happy to have you met at the airport by the authorities. And they were really very clear. So
Did it work?
pretty respectful of it.
Leave the plane. If you're halfway along and you can't stand the mask, you could just be bored.
Yeah, exactly. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Parachutes will be given to all those who.
all the dissenters.
Yeah.
But they were not as sort of spaced out as when they right at the beginning they were saying, okay, no middle seats and all this stuff.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was not quite so.
they're all packed now. I mean, the number of people traveling this summer is just amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And so I don't want to travel this summer just for tourism, but I'll wait till the fall. But the nearest next meeting will be something like December. That's about, do I want to fly to New Orleans in December? Probably, but it'll still be weird.
Yeah, well, I personally think that, once school starts and you have a lot of unvaccinated children getting together, probably without masks in many places, that this is going to become a childhood disease. I mean, given that most adults will have been vaccinated, it'll become sort of like measles or chickenpox or something that was highly transmissible that we all became immune to because we were exposed to as children. So we didn't have to get vaccinated against some of those diseases, at least. Obviously, later on, we may have gotten vaccinated against one or two of them, but and they mainly circulated in children, and children then brought it home to households and whatnot. And I think that's what's going to happen in the fall, and we're going to see. I mean, not very many children will get sick, although, as I heard in a recent lecture, that there are still as many children dying of COVID as were dying of measles or chickenpox before there were vaccines for them. And there's the multi-system inflammatory disease that's actually much, much more common, of course, than death in children. And that could be a real issue if there's not a vaccine for school-age children. And so we may well see a resurgence, not the kind of resurgence we had in the Northeast or in the initial wave, or the resurgence we had nationally, in December and January last year, but some kind of a sizable bump that's going to lead to people contemplating what to do. Whether anything restrictive happens as a result of that, I have no idea, but it may make a lot of us think twice about having meetings in person or taking airplanes, at least when transmission rates are high. Right now, transmission rates are really low. So actually, this is probably a good time to travel, to fly, to do whatever. Right. We went in March to Puerto Rico to actually visit our unvaccinated son and his partner, who were
they were half vaccinated.
Or half vaccinated, right? Who were living in a small apartment in Brooklyn with 2 different jobs and trying to work from home. They decided, let's go somewhere else and work from home. So they were able to do that. But when we went then, infection rates were coming way down. Puerto Rico had one of the lowest rates in the nation at that time. So we figured,
this is the moment.
This is a good moment.
We got away with it.
And I think right
now. Does anybody know about the chance for vaccine for children?
What's that?
Does anybody have any insight on the vaccination for children under 12?
Well, there's,
They hope it's coming by September, right?
yeah, I think both Moderna and Pfizer at least are doing trials in
okay.
6 to 11 well, actually Moderna's going up to 15 or actually up to 17, but because they're not yet approved for the 12, I mean, for what Pfizer is approved for, but there'll be, yeah, it's anticipated that probably there'll be a vaccine approved maybe in September for them. The trials are going on right now, and they'll certainly be able to look at how good the immune response is and whether there's, at least in a trial of say 3,000 people getting vaccinated, whether there's a side effect that hadn't been anticipated in that relatively small number. But they may not be able to look at effectiveness very well because there's not a lot of COVID circulating at the moment.
Right.
But if the antibody levels are good, using the same kind of immunological testing that is being used to assess the potential efficacy of a vaccine prior to a trial in adults, then and there's no reason to think it's going to be bad, but they still have to figure out the dose for much smaller people than for people our size. Then I think, to me, there's no reason there shouldn't be something by around September, but it really depends on when the pharmaceutical companies that are manufacturing the vaccines are ready.
Interesting. Well, it'll be still a better year than last.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No question.
already.
Already, I know.
Yeah.
Jim, you remember, so you're in public health?
Yes, yeah. I'm actually trained in internal medicine and infectious diseases, but spent my career in public health, mostly infectious disease epidemiology. So I've been finding this very interesting.
You're a year ahead of us at BCC, right?
Right. When I was in Larry's class, yeah.
Right. He just retired at the beginning of the pandemic from being a pediatrician. And he lives in Rockville.
Oh,
Oh, okay. So he got the cicadas. But did he get called, or did obviously being an older person, he would want to avoid or be told to avoid direct patient care, but did he sort of get called? Did he consider getting doing telemedicine or doing something during that time period to sort of help?
He was informed by his wife Lucy.
Right.
You remember her?
Yes. I think they've been married longer than we have.
Who has asthma, that she would be at real risk if he brought home the disease. So that's when he decided to retire.
Yeah.
And no, he didn't get into any telemedicine.
Yeah.
Oh,
So Brett, don't you have an older brother? What's his name?
Joel, you know him?
Joel, yes.
oh, yeah, of course.
A year or two ahead of us?
2 years, yes. He lives,
So in my brother's Bob's class, right? Yeah,
that's probably how I know Bob, yeah.
yeah,
Be Bobby?
Bobby, yeah. Then he was Bobby. Now he's trying not to be, you know.
Joel.
Yeah,
As a matter of
Joel,
fact, now he's known to his grandchildren as Chief.
Had to get there somehow.
my brother Joel, let's see, got kicked out of grad school at Harvard. It had something to do with blood on student records, something during the war.
Oh, intentional blood. Okay. Maybe cow's blood doesn't matter, right? Okay.
Lived in Israel for a while, came back, lived on a couple of communes, worked as his commune's Volkswagen mechanic.
Right.
U.S. communes or Israeli communes?
U.S. and he was
U.S. Okay.
in Israel for a year. And then settled down and became my oldest brother's chief of staff for the oldest brother's cable TV company in Washington, which my brother ran out of his apartment,
Really?
and still does in Southwest.
Ha,
It's not a franchise company. He signs up buildings, and now he does a lot of conference video for government agencies.
So Joel went to Yale, right?
Michigan.
Went to Michigan as an undergrad. Okay.
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah. And he became a Sufi, changed his name to Joseph, but doesn't preach to us.
there's
Fascinating.
a point for him.
I also had a career as a car mechanic, actually. I had a
Oh,
2-year career as a Volkswagen mechanic working at Silver Spring Auto City.
Silver
know that place?
Spring. Oh,
I don't know if it's still
Cool.
there or not.
how did that, how did you get from U.S. senator to Volkswagen mechanic?
I got home from college without graduating and decided I wanted to work on cars and started calling around to car dealerships. Turns out they all have training programs, and Volkswagen happened to have an opening in their training program. And my father had owned a 1959 or something like that Volkswagen from Silver Spring Auto City. So that's where I was. So I worked there for 2 years. I started out as a trainee and was promoted to a general line mechanic. So it was fun.
At the
You
time,
still
did you,
fix your own cars?
Sorry?
You still fix your own cars?
I do, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
More than I would kind of expect. Yeah. Um, the newer cars are way more complicated, of course, but
Yeah, we have a 2000 Honda and a 2004 Honda if you want to come out and be a mechanic in New Haven.
I
They're
tell you,
pushing 300,000 miles, each of them.
the new car, all you need to do is get on the internet and find the YouTube video that explains how to do what you
Yeah.
need to do.
and then get parts on eBay from junkyards?
Right.
Rock Auto.
That's amazing. So it taught you what you didn't want to do in long term, but you still stuck with it, so to speak.
Yeah, I eventually went back to the University of Maryland. I graduated from Haverford, but eventually, but I didn't, not on time. And then I went to MIT. I got a master's degree in chemical engineering. So and that was my career.
Well,
And that's where the desiccants come in. Yeah.
when you were a mechanic, did you think that was going to be your career at the time?
No, I just something I really wanted to do.
I bet that was an appealing thing on your MIT application. Now, here's somebody who actually understands.
Actually knows something about machinery.
The most appealing thing on my MIT application was, oh, you went to Haverford? Oh, it's been a long time since we had someone from Haverford.
As opposed to Volkswagen Auto. No, it's
But what I should have had is that when I went to work for Union Carbide, they should have given me some credit for having worked on mechanical stuff.
yeah.
They give credit, for lab technicians and stuff like that.
Oh, well. I got to run to another meeting. Sorry.
Okay. Great to see
I'm
you.
still working till the end of the month.
June 27th. What time? What time on June 27th?
I really don't know. All I know is it's the 29th. I have to depart 2 days before July 1. You have to have a separation date before you retire. I have the rules are so weird here, but so I'm not allowed to set foot on the building for 2 days. Then after July 1, I can. Very funny. You have to have true separation for a certain amount of time.
Interesting.
I don't understand it, but I think it's IRS things. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll be happy to. So sometime on June 29th, I'll start celebrating.
Congratulations.
All
Yeah,
right. Yes.
congratulations.
I don't know, new life. It's just like coming out of COVID. Now I can not wear a mask and I can be retired. So what does that mean? I have
Right.
2 problems to deal with. Yes.
Are you likely to be in Cambria in late August?
Yeah, sure. Let me know. We work, you come up about every 3 weeks or so. Let me know if you can come through.
Sure.
But good, yeah.
You're not still mad at me.
No, that's the matter. Yeah. Hey, behind me is the Murphy bed. See that? This is my office in Cambria. And so that's the Murphy bed.
Uh-huh.
For unwelcome guests, just fold them up in it, move it full down.
Tell them to
Queen
push
size.
the wrong button.
Queen size wall bed. There's no button, but you just pop them up in there and fold them.
Cool.
Very good. Good to see you all.
Nice to see you, Mike.
Yeah. Take care. I'm happy to join. Thank you for the invite and thank you for gathering us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Jim and Alice, you're mentioning that you have a 43-year-old kid.
Yeah,
Just thinking, Larry and Lucy, their first child was born in 1972, so she's going to be 50 next year.
whoa,
Wow.
whoa.
That's amazing. We waited 7 years before our first child.
We sort of were thinking, do we want to do this? We're having a good time. And we said, well, if we want to do it, we better. So now we have 3 and the youngest is, so they're 40, 43, and 35.
Yeah, but 50 is that's
That's
amazing.
crazy, right? That doesn't compute.
My mother used to say, may she rest in peace. My mother used to say she didn't feel old until her first grandchild was 30.
Yeah, well, Larry knows. Larry might remember my older brother because I have a brother who's 2 years older than I. So when we were in 10th grade, he was in 12th grade at BCC, and he got married right after college. And even though they weren't exactly planning on it, a pregnancy followed fairly quickly afterwards. And so I have a nephew who's 52 and a niece who's turning 50 this year, or just turned 50 this year. So it's things are.
Yeah, it's quite bizarre.
Yeah, it's a measure of time.
A friend taught me an easier way to calculate our age, because you can't remember how old you are. And it goes like this. I was born in 1949. I can remember that. And so I'm 49 years old.
Always and forever.
You guys are younger than me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So are you still playing the trumpet?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can show my shirt.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, for 13 months I didn't play except in my garage, and now things are starting again. Everybody's really eager to play, so I've been playing chamber music about twice a week.
Oh, nice.
I played a gig at a Chabad temple last weekend. They were dedicating a new space, and that was kind of interesting, being around Hasids in full uniform in California. So after we were done, I was chatting with the rabbi, and I mentioned I hadn't been bar mitzvahed, and he dragged me inside and bar mitzvahed me right on the spot. So, I call it a pop-up bar mitzvah.
Never heard of such a thing.
No. And it turns out that when you eliminate the speeches and
Pretty quick.
and the singing and all the praying, yeah, it takes like 5 minutes.
Not that much to it, huh?
Abracadabra.
Yeah. And I suppose now I have to send them some money.
Oh, and that's the trick.
That's why they were happy to do that.
That's right.
Now and forever.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's 40 miles away, so I have a built-in excuse not to join.
never to go.
Yeah, so were they masked or were they, or variably masked, or it wasn't any requirement? Because I know that, wind instruments and of course singing
Oh,
can disseminate if you so happen to be carrying COVID at the time or potentially infectious with it. And so those have been, as indoor activities, were highly discouraged for a while. But now I know that there is singing indoors and music playing indoors, but there's often everyone else is wearing masks. But
yeah.
sounds like,
My playing has all been outdoors,
oh, okay.
and everyone's vaccinated. We're going to get kicked out again at any
Yeah.
minute.
All right,
When we get kicked out, you want to call it a day or
let's
re-enlist?
call it a day and do it
Oh.
again sometime.
Yeah. But before we get kicked out, say hi to Larry and Lucy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Joel.
Yes. So there's a third brother?
I have two other brothers.
You
yeah.
have two other brothers too, right?
Yeah. Mhm. I have there's Larry, and then I'm the second one. Bob, or Bobby at the time, he's an endocrinologist that lives in Cincinnati because his bride is from Cincinnati. And Bruce, the youngest, is a ophthalmologist and lives in St. Louis because his bride was from St. Louis.
Wow, all over the
Kind of
place.
spread out.
Yeah, but a lot of Midwest.
A lot of Midwest, yeah.
Mhm.
The triangle, Midwest.
Yeah,
Yeah, Vince, something you may not have known. I have a brother who's just a year younger than me, who would have been in your class, except for he went to Walt Whitman, because where we lived was actually in theory, I could have switched after 1 year at BCC to Walt Whitman, but I decided not to. I didn't even know Alice then.
yeah, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
At least in this form.
Alice, do you still play flute?
Uh, technically, yes, but I haven't touched it in a long time.
Yeah. You were good when you were a teenager.
Yeah, and I probably could get it back. It's just kind of languished a bit, but
Yeah, she was very good. I can attest to it.
yeah. Jim's also a flautist.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in 10th grade, he was the third seat and I was the fourth. And then when I was in 11th, I was in first and he was in second.